making plans for Nigel.
This boy is electric.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the EV Puzzle and my gazebo in the garden. It's such a nice day, I thought I'd come outside and try and record this. I want to talk to you today about my hot water heating test that I've done between April and May and the results of that. And well, let's do something different. You know how in videos you have to wait right until the end to get to the final bit you're interested in. Let's give you that now. This is the result from May's testing on energy usage for heating my hot water with the Mixergy hot water tank using the Mixergy's scheduling system. We used a lot less energy in May heating our hot water. It's incredibly low. I'll put the number up here. What does it say? It's 37 kilowatt hours, something like that. Anyway, the number's up there. If you compare that over time and look at what we've been using to heat our hot water using the myenergi Eddi as the switch that controls the immersion in the Mixergy hot water tank, then these are the numbers going back over the last few months. Again, the details are up here. But the lowest I've ever seen is 50 kilowatt hours. The average good month is 60-something kilowatt hours. 70-something, we've had a little bit more energy usage. So for this month in May, to see so low an energy use for the Mixergy hot water tank either says that Mixergy is so good at its scheduling and capabilities that it's really, really efficient, or there's something wrong with that number. And what I want to get into is not necessarily the inaccuracy of those numbers, but what I want to get into is the test and the comparison and what I found, the difference between doing these two things. So let's talk about how my hot water heating works. We have a hot water tank. It's a Mixergy online smart hot water tank. So it's controlled online, so I can use a website, I can use an app, and I can control it that way. So it's an online hot water tank. But it works in the same way as most traditional hot water tanks, that it has an immersion heater in it. It has an electrical wire that connects to a switch, and normally to turn the immersion on, you flick the switch. If you want to go more than just an on-off switch, you can install a timer. So in between the switch being left on permanently and the immersion, you have a switch. And that's all the myenergi Eddi is. It's an intelligent switch that turns on the immersion or turns off. So you leave the main electrical switch on, and then you let the Eddi, the smart online device, and solar diverter control whether the hot water heating, the immersion, is on or off. Now, the Mixergy tank basically has a second wire that comes from the main original switch, and I'll be putting a diagram up here if I haven't already, that shows that. So you've got the one main switch and you've got two routes of getting to the immersion. You've got the one that goes via the Eddi, and we've got a third-party diverter switch on the Mixergy tank that allows that second input, and another wire that goes from the same switch and goes to the Mixergy system directly. And then, of course, the immersion is controlled online through an app, through a website, or through its own smart AI. So there's no manual switching. It's either the Eddi doing it or the Mixergy tank doing it. And this is where it gets into, well, why am I seeing such a huge improvement on energy efficiency? Because I'm setting the same target temperature. I'm trying to heat hot water at the same sort of times for the same use. I'm not changing my use of hot water. I'm not using less, I'm not using more. I've tried to replicate having the same 3 tank cleansers in a month. I did that in April and I did it again in May to try and have the same amount of heating in the same way, to try and make it a valid test. It's the same immersion, so it's the same electrical device that is actually heating the hot water. It's the same amount of hot water for half the value. How can half the energy coming in, or 20, 30, 40, 50% less energy coming in, how can that be heating the same amount of hot water when it's the same amount of hot water, it's the same tank, it's the same immersion, it's the same everything? So I'm very suspicious of these numbers and what it really means. The big difference between the two methods of using the solar diverter, the Eddi device, and using the Mixergy tank itself is that the Eddi controls the number of amps that goes into the immersion element. So sometimes I'm heating with 500 watts or a kilowatt on solar, and I've set the maximum amp on the Eddi to only be 2 kilowatts. So the maximum I'm ever going to get to, even when it's on boosting and trying to boost as fast as it can, it only uses 2 kilowatts. Whereas the Mixergy device has no control of the amps, so therefore you turn it on, it's the full 13 amps. So it's 3.3 kilowatts of power being used to heat with the element. That's the only difference between going via the Eddi which is ramping up and down with solar excess when it's on and boosting at a maximum of 2 kilowatts, versus the Mixergy system, which is just on and off for shorter periods of time at a higher power rating of 3.3 kilowatts. But even with the Eddi heating at 2/3 of the power, if it's doing it for longer, then power over time equals kilowatt hours, and the number of kilowatt hours going in should equal the same amount of heated hot water coming out, shouldn't it? So getting into the specifics of the test, what I did, for 3 years now I've had a Mixergy hot water tank, and I haven't used its own smart scheduling, its own AI system, because I'm very stubborn. I stubbornly said I don't like how they've implemented it, because you have to turn on grid assistance. They don't allow you to use their smart AI scheduling system unless you give them the ability to use your hot water tank to help them earn money from the grid by assisting the grid, by using energy when they want to pull energy off the grid, or not turning it on when they definitely don't want you to be using energy on the grid. So grid assistance is something that you can turn on or off with a single switch on the software on the Mixergy system, and that enables you to be able to use the smart scheduling. I really dislike them limiting options, limiting features on the system, unless you give them the ability to earn money from your hot water tank and not share that value with the customer. They justified it by saying that they use that revenue to help improve the software. Well, I'm sorry to say, but as a customer, I haven't seen very much software improvement over the 3 years that I've had it. And hence, please listen to this video about the new feature suggestions that I think are valid, because don't I deserve those new feature suggestions? Shouldn't you be improving the software? So hopefully Mixergy will listen to this video, because there's a couple of new feature suggestions that I'd like to propose to them, and I'll do that via this video, and I've also done it in writing to them directly. But this test that I've done has revealed a couple of weaknesses that could easily be improved and made better on the Mixergy system with just a few small software changes. So anyway, my stubbornness has meant I have not flicked on this switch. I'll show it up there. And that's all it says you have to do. You flick on grid assistance and you flick on auto scheduling, and you make a choice between standard or eco. That is all it seems to say that you have to do to implement scheduling. But it doesn't get into the details. When you do it, it doesn't tell you that it's on. It doesn't show anything that's working and I'm building your schedule. There's no confirmation messages. There's a poor amount of communication to let you know, is it on? Is it working? So the first day that I did turn it on, well, nothing happened. My hot water got cold because it didn't implement any schedules at all to heat the hot water. So it wasn't working, which made me think, does it just not work? Is it turned off somehow in the background? Is there another switch that I'm missing? There's no sort of documentation that gives you any more clarity of what you should be doing. So I deleted any manual schedules I had in case that was interfering. I turned off maintain target temperature in case that was interfering with it. But again, these are things that I'm trying that aren't documented anywhere to say they're required to make it work. So I just found it didn't work. It wasn't creating a schedule for me. 2 days we went with me having to then manually boost because there was no automated schedule being created. And then suddenly I saw one. There was an auto scheduling. Whoa, it works! It is a working system. It can produce an automated schedule. But the schedule wasn't a very good one. It seemed to be heating too much hot water at a time that I didn't really want to do the heating. Even though the Mixergy system is aware of my tariff, it's not biasing that heating automated schedule to make sure it boosts at the cheap rate on my tariff. It was just doing it any old time and heating more hot water than I wanted to do. So I turned it off. And instead of using the automated schedule, which might or might not have improved over time, I got fed up with it. And my conclusion is I've had it for 3 years. If it hasn't in the background learnt what I do with my hot water already, then it's a pretty dumb system. It's not very smart. What's the point of waiting until I turn it on and ask for it to then start learning when it's had 3 years to do it, of spare cycles in the background? So it's not a good start that it didn't work for me. And my patience ran out. So let's be fair about that. It might have worked long term, but the documentation doesn't explain how it works or how long it takes, or there's no confidence that it's going to do the right thing. So I changed what I was attempting to do in this test. Rather than trying the automated scheduling, I tried to replicate what I was doing with the myenergi Eddi device. So with the myenergi Eddi, what I do is I boost the hot water at 5:15 in the morning for a quarter of an hour. That's the and my camera just fell over. So the Eddi, the myenergi Eddi, I boost at 5:15 in the morning for quarter of an hour. So that's the last quarter of an hour of the cheap rate period on Octopus Intelligent Go until 5:30 in the morning. So as close as possible to when I'm using the hot water, I boost it. And I boost it so it has 10, 15, 20, that sort of percentage of the hot water full. I then also have a boost at 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And with Home Assistant, I control whether the Eddi is on. So if the Eddi is on, then the boost will occur at 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock. But if the Eddi's off, because I've already got hot water that's hot enough, then it's not turned on, and hence those boosts don't happen. So what I'm doing with Home Assistant is tracking the actual temperature of the hot water using data from the Mixergy tank and determining whether I turn the Eddi on to boost the hot water. If it happens at, say, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock that the temperature is too low and it wants to boost, then it's going to use the solar diverting capability. And if it happens to be doing it at 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock, which is more set for winter, that there's been no solar diversion, the temperature is still wrong, the boost then kicks in and gives me the hot water that I want. But the myenergi system can only do it in quarter of an hour blocks. So that's what I'm doing on the myenergi Eddi device. So the first thing to do on the Mixergy system was to create a manual schedule at 5:15 to do exactly the same. But instead of a quarter of an hour, it gives you the percentage of hot water that you want. So I've been able to set just 10%. So it doesn't matter whether I'm only boosting an extra 2%, it might only do it for a couple of minutes and then it'll turn off. So it should be more efficient because it's not heating the hot water for as long, but it is using 3.3 kilowatts on the immersion. So that's the first thing, that the schedule's more granular. Instead of a quarter of an hour block, I can be for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I can set it off at 5:13 in the morning instead of 5:15. So it's much more granular, and it only provides the amount of hot water I want. It's not just a time-based boost. It's not as dumb. So the Mixergy system is already just setting the schedule, seemingly a little bit smarter. And then on top of that, Mixergy has this great little feature that says maintain target temperature. So that's all of the automation that I was doing and all of the complexity that I was doing manually with Home Assistant to make the Eddi maintain the hot water temperature. The Mixergy system will just do it for you when you turn this switch on, which is brilliant. Although it waits until you get 5 degrees below your target temperature before it does the boost. And that happens at any time of day. So Mixergy, new feature improvement, please. Maintain target temperature needs a time schedule of when you want it to maintain the target temperature, not 24 hours a day. I don't want to maintain the temperature at 10 o'clock at night, at 1 in the morning. I want to do the boost at 5:15. I don't want to have it maintained before that point, but I only want it maintained thereafter, while I might use hot water. So that's an efficiency change, a new feature suggestion that Mixergy could do to improve things. The way I've got around that, the way I've tweaked the system, is I've used Home Assistant to look at the hot water temperature. And if it drops down out of hours, then I also drop the target maintained temperature. It's normally set at 52 degrees. So by the time it gets to 5 o'clock at night, I might set it to 49 degrees or 47, and then drop it again at 9 at night to 45 degrees. And that way the 5-degree margin means that the hot water has to drop below 40 degrees before it'll try to reheat. And basically I'm fooling the system into not maintaining the target temperature out of hours because there isn't a feature that does it for you. I'd also like a parameter to say that 5-degree variance, can it be 4 degrees or 6 degrees? I'd like it to be a parameter. It would make it more efficient and more tailored to my requirements. So those new features, yes please, Mixergy, if you can. So anyway, that's what I've been doing. I've been setting up the Mixergy system to have the same schedule, the same maintained temperature sort of features that I've enabled and implemented using the myenergi Eddi device and Home Assistant. So if I'm replicating the temperatures, if I'm replicating the amount of heat that I'm putting in and when I want it and the amount of hot water I'm using, then it should provide a similar result, shouldn't it? So why is it so low? Why is that number from Mixergy so low? I have reported it to them multiple times saying it looks wrong, it looks low. But they've said it's just an energy sensor. How can it be wrong? So they haven't really looked into it into any detail. I'm going to follow up after this video and do a specific test and change the Eddi device to heat at 3.3 kilowatts at its maximum and do a specific test from I don't know, say from 10% hot water is available, heat for another 10% and see what energy is used, and do it via the Eddi, and then do exactly the same on exactly the same sort of day and produce the same amount of hot water and see how much energy is actually used. And that'll prove whether the counters are accurate between the two. But anyway, that's what I've been implementing, and that's what this test was all about. Like for like, trying to use the Mixergy system to replicate what I've achieved with the Eddi and Home Assistant. And using Home Assistant and Mixergy, I've actually done that. And it does seem that the end result is better. The Mixergy system seems more online, more interactive, more alive to my inputs, where the myenergi Eddi is using an app which is pretty antiquated now, only does it in blocks of 15 minutes. Literally trying to go on and delete my 3 schedules and re-add the 3 schedules took me over 20 minutes. You have to click on one and delete it, and then wait a minute, 2, 3 minutes. And then if you navigate away and navigate back after it seems to have done it, it magically appears back on the screen again. So there's some sort of loss of interaction between what the actual data is that's set and what it's showing on the app. It's just antiquated and old and blocky and just outdated. And again, you know, myenergi have not been improving their app and their interfaces in the years that I've had these devices. They're just using old, and it now looks out of date. I'm now actually reconsidering my thoughts about what I should have done with the Mixergy tank. When I bought the Mixergy tank, I bought the third-party diverter because I thought the Eddi was the best way of using it for the automated switch and the schedule. I liked using it and thought it was good. But now it feels old and clunky. It's not working very well. The app's just awful. So maybe I should have gone with the Mixergy solar diverter to control the amps, and I shouldn't have been using the myenergi Eddi at all. But we are where we are, and I've now got the two choices. I can either use the Eddi and Home Assistant automation that I've created, which is more complex and more awkward to change, but once it's done, it's set, it does work, and it provides a really efficient way of heating my hot water and gives us the amount of hot water we want. It is the best way of getting the results out of the Mixergy hot water tank. But what I've now found is that the Mixergy system itself can replicate exactly what I was doing. And it's simpler, and the scheduling's easier, and it's more interactive, it's more friendly to use. I'm not swearing at it all the time saying, why haven't you improved it, myenergi? It's a better system. And I do find that communicating with Mixergy is a more pleasurable task at the moment. They're not such a big company, and they seem to care about their customers, like myenergi did when they started earlier. They haven't really headed in the right direction. They've headed away from being close to the customers. Now they just seem to care about volume and building and, you know, selling more and more and more. But the actual customer experience doesn't appear to be their priority anymore. So where to go? What am I going to do? Am I going to go back and use the Eddi, or am I going to carry on using the Mixergy? Well, right now in the summer, I think I'm going to stick using the Mixergy system because it is a more enjoyable process. And until I actually find out whether that number is accurate or not, it does appear that it's using less energy. So I'm happy with that. The only downside in all of this test is what I've worked out is that the Mixergy system is coming on and heating the hot water at times that I don't really want it to. And if I'm using energy in the house on other things like the oven is on, or Susan's cooking in the kitchen, then it's going to put a burden onto the battery. So I have found that when we haven't got the right amount of solar, then we are using the battery a lot more to heat the hot water when those boosts occur. So in winter especially, we're basically going to be heating the hot water from battery power, which is not a very efficient way of doing it. Using the solar diverter is a much better way of doing it with the Eddi. So maybe in the summer, it's better. Was that a couple of pheasants just running across the screen? I think it was. Yeah, as the camera falls over again, we have a couple of pheasants fighting in the garden. Anyway, so the Mixergy system is less battery friendly because it's 3.3 kilowatts. The Eddi is more battery friendly because it's using solar diversion, not using the battery at all. And when there isn't any solar available, it's only 2 kilowatts, so it gives me more battery power capacity. I've got a 5 kilowatt inverter on the battery, so I'm only using 2 of that 5 kilowatts instead of 3.3. There's more left to do other things, which means the Mixergy system might encourage me to use more peak rate energy, where at the moment I'm using no peak rate at all. So the Eddi is working really well from that perspective. So what would you do? Let me know in the comments below. Should I go back and use the Eddi, or should I use the Mixergy system? There seems to be pros and cons for both. Or, a really radical decision. Maybe I should upgrade my Mixergy tank and put their solar diverter on and have the best of both worlds. Maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I should talk to Mixergy and see whether I can get that fitted to my tank. Then get rid of the Eddi completely, because that app and the interface, it does annoy me. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts if you've got a Mixergy hot water tank, or if you're following other people that have got Mixergy hot water tanks and they're saying how cheap and economical it is to heat their hot water. I wonder, are those stats accurate? Is their energy counter, like mine, really, really optimistic? Take care. See you again soon for more energy videos. Bye for now.